Geologists are out with a very startling warning that Southern California is overdue for a major and possibly catastrophic earthquake. A new study says it's expected to hit along the San Andreas Fault north of Los Angeles. It could have a magnitude of 7.5 or higher. That's big. For the first time, scientists are closer to knowing when it could strike. CBS News science and futurist contributor Michio Kaku is a physics professor at the City University of New York City. Good morning to you, Professor. When I went to see you in the green room, you said, I'm here with doom and gloom. But let me tell you, I grew up in high school and junior high. We've been hearing about an earthquake coming in California for years. What makes this different?
Well, before it was all hocus pocus and black magic predicting earthquakes. And I was born in California, 10 miles from the San Andreas Fault, living under the shadow of the big one. Now we can quantify this. And we now know that the San Andreas Fault is locked, loaded, and ready to rumble. We now realize that the people of Los Angeles are living on borrowed time. We now know that by digging into the soil, we can go down 1,200 years into the past, looking at soil laid down hundreds of years ago, and we find 10 major earthquakes in the last 1,000 years. The difference in time is roughly 100 years on average. The last big one was 160 years ago. So according to one calculation, we're 60 years overdue for another big one.
You're talking about the great 1857 quake, right?
That's right. It was a huge 7.9 earthquake that was so big it actually liquefied the soil north of Los Angeles, like halfway between Bakersfield and LA.
And the tremors in that quake, by some reports, it lasted up to 3 minutes. Is that right?
Yeah, so we're not talking about just a few seconds, like maybe in a Northridge type earthquake. We're talking about an earthquake that lasts for minutes. And also the U.S. Geologic Survey did an estimate of property damage. What could happen if the 1857 earthquake happens today? The numbers are frightening. $200 billion in property damage. That's billion with a B. 50,000 people injured. 5 major skyscrapers toppled because of a gigantic earthquake, a 7.8 in this study.
Well, you're not sweetness and light this morning with the information you're giving, but it is important. So if we live in if people who live in that area, what would you recommend them to do other than freak out?
First of all, don't panic, because the next big earthquake could happen decades from now.
That's counterintuitive, Professor.
We don't know precisely when. Seismology is not a predictive science. However,
don't panic.
Schools. I think schools should have a special session to teach their kids what to do, where to go, how to communicate in the process of an earthquake. Families should meet with everyone in the family. Do you have batteries, first aid kits, water, food? Who do you contact with? Do you have like a radio, a transistor radio? Little things like this.
They should have that.
They should have that.
Right now.
Right now. And then longer term, building codes have to be accentuated, I think. And also power lines have to be reinforced, and redundancies, so we have power and buildings don't collapse unnecessarily.
You're saying we may have decades, though. I mean, the energy's been building up, but it could be, I mean, we could be another 10, 20, 30 years.
It could be tomorrow. It could be decades from now. We just know that the San Andreas Fault has been moving at about an inch a year. So it's like winding up a clock. It gets tighter and tighter. An inch a year is the rate at which it's been tightening.
Wow.
Therefore, it's a law of physics. All that tension has got to go someplace. And so it's not a question of if, it's a question of when.
Well, Michio Kaku, always great to have your expertise this morning, however scary. Sometimes it's asteroids and meteors. Today it's earthquakes. Thank you.
Cape, Cheshire. Filmed on June the 29th, 2008. While innocently filming a plane, an unknown disc-shaped craft appears in the skies above the town Elbeth. Although multiple witnesses report the sighting to the authorities, no record can be found. Southern England, June 1976. During the filming of the first ever commercial flight of a British Airways Concorde, a small spherical object appears in shot. The craft curiously investigates the Concorde then disappears into the sky at an incredible speed. Here we look at the original footage. The Kodak company analyzed the footage, claiming the anomaly was due to a flare of the camera. Yet, no video analysis or evidence to disprove this footage has ever been disclosed to the public. Birmingham, April the 10th, 2010. An unidentified object is seen and captured on film by a passing motorist. Shortly after, what looked to be military-owned jets arrive in the scene.
Tell you that homes have been severely damaged. There are situations here that families are coming back to absolutely nothing. You have downed trees, as you can see before me. You have power lines that are down. You have whole power poles that have been taken, literally ripped out of the ground and are leaning over. It is just, it's awful to witness, especially awful when you see the looks and the horror on the faces of the individuals who live inside these homes, and they have nothing left. We met one family who came back. Everything inside their house was destroyed, and the only thing remaining was their pit bull dog. And they were happy that he was alive and well. They came back to assure that. Right next door to them was their landlord, and in fact, the daughter of the landlord, we're told, rode out the night here, and she fortunately was okay. But as you well know, at least one person in this nearby town of Ottawa was killed when a falling tree branch fell on top of him. Not here, but you can look at the size of the trunks of the trees here that have been broken off, and you can see where that would be quite possible, or someone could be killed by a falling tree branch. Over here, this is the Pinkleton glass factory. In fact, that factory, the fire chief tells me, is where the name of this town comes from. It was once called the National Plate Glass Factory. It employs about 250 people or so. At one time, it employed thousands of people. And to give you a context of just how bad the damage is here, the fire chief told me there is no way they're getting back into this building. You can look at the roof and the siding completely blown off of the frame of this building. And so that is a major cleanup as well. And I have to tell you, the other thing about this is just how many people this one tornado affected. There are 500 families whose homes were impacted here. That's a quarter of the town of Naples. So it is really hitting this place hard. The governor of Illinois stopped through here to reassure families that the state would be here for them. And in fact, last night he enacted the state's Emergency Response Operations Center so that they could hit the ground running this morning and ensure that they would be here to provide help and assistance to many of the families who are, quite frankly, going to be displaced.
And Michelle, in just a few last seconds we have with you, we were watching some of the footage of just the size and strength of that tornado. You're showing us people's lives have been literally turned upside down. How much of a warning did they have to make a plan of escape?
You know, the people that I spoke with said that the sirens went off at least 5 minutes before the tornado actually hit. So in terms of the first response, not the first response, but the first indicator that danger was on its way, they said they were forewarned, and it gave them enough time to warn their families, and to tell them not to go to, or at least not to come to this area, that they stayed far away.
Yeah, I mean, at least they had 5 minutes, but imagine
Absolutely.
having just that amount of time to figure out how to completely get out of the way. Michelle Miller giving us some great insight there in Naples, Illinois. Thanks, Michelle.
Dozens of homes from Oklahoma to Wisconsin. At least 24 people were killed, and at least 2 people rather were killed, and dozens more were hurt. The massive system stretches across more than 1,000 miles. So far, 26 tornadoes have been reported across 5 different states. David Begno's in Chautauqua, Wisconsin. That's one of the hardest hit communities. David, good morning.
Gail, good morning. It is still raining as we get our first real look this morning at the damage, which spans nearly 50 miles. 50 miles here in Wisconsin. At this property, it's as if somebody took a knife and sliced off the treetops, bulldozed what was on this slab. But I want you to look at the back part of the property. That house back there, it's as if it was untouched except for a few shingles on the roof that were merely displaced, as what's believed to have been a tornado hopscotch through here. 10 minutes down the road, as the crow flies, there is a mobile home park that was hit, and the damage is severe. Video captured from above this trailer park in Wisconsin shows the power of what is believed to be a tornado.
We pulled walls off of people and then carried them, put them on stretchers, leg injuries, arm injuries. It's nothing I've ever seen in my 20-plus year career in law enforcement.
Down power lines, trees cut off at their trunks, and a massive field of debris has littered the neighborhood many call home. One person has died at this trailer park.
These are people we work with, that we go to school with, and they're our friends and our neighbors.
All my neighbors are okay.
In Elk City, Oklahoma, a tornado tore through this subdivision. At least 100 structures were damaged and more than 50 destroyed. Elk City Mayor Bill Helton.
The devastation was, it's hard to explain. It looked like some of the homes just exploded. Of course, some of them looked like they'd been, blown apart by high winds.
The winds tossed buses and trucks in this lot like matchbox cars. And reports of people trapped in their homes kept rescue crews working overnight. A 53-year-old man was killed after his car was thrown several hundred feet, pinning him between his vehicle and his home. Our affiliate in Oklahoma City says that man was in his house, called 911, said, "I'm going to my shelter," and never made it off his property. Nor today, if you live in the upper Midwest, you are under a severe weather threat.
The deadly tornado that ripped through Oklahoma on Friday was the widest one ever recorded in the U.S. It was more than 2.5 miles across. Winds hit 295 miles an hour. The National Weather Service says it was an EF5. That is the strongest category. It killed 19 people. And to give you some perspective, if that tornado had hit the southern tip of Manhattan, it would have covered the entire length of the island. That gives me the chills. Wow.
And storms, but we are just watching this one thunderstorm go back over the weather 3, and this is the one that's had a history of rotation. There's no history of damage with this, but there is a history of rotation with this storm for the last almost 3 hours now, as it's pushed across the eastern part of our viewing area. And so now we have that tornado warning until next few minutes for Edgecombe County, eastern Edgecombe County. But really the rotation with that is almost out of Edgecombe. There it is. There, we'll show you. Again, right in this area is where there's the rotation. So the Edgecombe County line is right here. It's moving out of Edgecombe, and it's going to straddle the Halifax County line. That's why that warning was issued, and for eastern sections of Halifax County until 8:15, because it's got a long distance to go there if it can hold together. There's a good chance, there's at least some chance that its warning will be canceled early if the rotation does diminish, but it's still there, and that means that there's the potential for a tornado on the ground. We haven't gotten any reports of that, but folks in mainly now eastern Halifax County in our viewing area, you need to take cover. That Palmyra community there, east of Scotland Neck. Again, pretty rural area, but folks, if you're along this area around Highway 903, Hobgood Road, Winslow Road, those areas of eastern Halifax County, get into a safe spot right away. There may be a tornado not that many miles away from you, pressing to the northeast at about 30 miles per hour. There's some heavy rain with that, and a lot of cloud-to-ground lightning as it moves eastward. And even if there isn't a tornado, it easily could be a damaging wind gust to 60 miles per hour or so.
That's right. And zooming out once again, if you are just now joining us, we do have 2 active warnings at this point. So we have a tornado warning out for Halifax County, also more of the same, a severe thunderstorm warning. Watching 2 areas of rotation at this point, but just looking at a wider view, pretty much things are a lot, not seeing as much activity farther to the south near Raleigh, Smithfield, Sanford, Chris. That severe threat going down the farther south you go, and that's because that warm front is lifting to the north. And really the strongest storms right now, that's near Henderson, Roanoke Rapids, along with these storms that are under a warning. So looking at this severe thunderstorm warning out for central sections of Halifax County. As I mentioned earlier, this is under a severe
Niburu.